Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be doing a little moonshot. We just hit 15,000 subscribers somehow, which still blows my mind. But basically what we wanted to do today is experiment a little bit with making the most absurd launch vehicle possible for the purposes of putting something on the moon. So first things first, let's go ahead and design my little lunar lander. So again, let's take a look here. I've got myself my little capsule, which is looking pretty good. I'm going to grab this bit in the back, but I'm more interested in the engine so I can get the screen up here. So if we're going to safely land on the moon, we're going to need probably about 5,000 meters per second of delta V in order to safely do it. As it stands right now, I'm looking at 4,700, but I actually don't want to use that. I want something a little bit lighter. So I'm going to do liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen. It's going to give me about 3,100. You're probably sitting there going, why did your fuel economy go down if your ISP went up? The reason is because, unfortunately for us, hydrogen and oxygen are very big molecules, so they take up a lot of space from their energy density. So let's go ahead and take a look at my thrust to weight ratio. That is way too high. We only need about 0.3 to safely land on the moon. So you can already see that I can probably go with a better system here. I'm going to go ahead and pop this thing over to everybody's favorite bell shape, and I'm going to optimize it for fuel economy real quickly. There we go. Now that's what I call a lunar landing kind of an engine there. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to go ahead and make this thing a little bit bigger so that we can safely go ahead and actually get ourselves on the ground. So I'm going to start that by increasing the radius of this so that we can go ahead and pack 2 people on board. There we go. 125% gets me 1.25 meters. Let's go ahead and increase the size here up to 1.25 meters also. And now we're talking. We have 4,020 meters a second of DV, which is pretty good. Of course, we want to think about returning to Earth, so we're going to get ourselves a handy-dandy Interstage. We're actually going to break this part off, flip this thing over. We'll go ahead and get ourselves everybody's favorite little heat shield on the bottom. We're going to change the diameter of that heat shield up to, what do we need, about 1.25 meters as well. Looks good. We'll go ahead and throw on our little parachute on the nose. We're going to have to increase the size of this just a little bit, too, because keep in mind, we're going to be carrying 2 people with this one. Nice. Let's go ahead and, speaking of 2 people, let's put 2 people on board. This time I'm going to make sure they're inside and not outside. Of course, as everybody knows, whenever I do this, something terrible happens to the astronauts. So good luck, everybody. All right, let's go ahead and spring this, 1.25. We don't need this to be very big. Again, this is just going to be the top. So now, of course, I'm going to slap on the bottom of this thing, and I notice my thrust to weight is down to 1, which, again, is still more than enough. But unfortunately, I've lost a lot of delta V because this thing got so heavy. So I'm actually going to have to pop the bottom of this thing off. We'll rank it up to, what do you think, about 6 meters. Slap my engine back on. Still can do a little bit better than that. That looks a little bit better. Slap that on. Okay, back up to 4,000 meters a second, which is actually still not enough. The other problem we're going to have is because we're going to use this thing as one giant lunar lander, we're going to have to make sure that we have enough basically monopropellant in order to safely get this thing down on the ground. So unfortunately, we're not done yet. Let's go ahead and get ourselves a little battery section. Of course, whenever I do battery sections, I always like to color them something slightly different, so I knew them to be batteries. Go ahead and select that real quick. Boop. Let's go ahead and switch to this mode. We're going to set the fuel type over to battery. Again, we just need a little bit more juice to get us a little bit further. We'll go ahead and design it so that when we do break this thing off, we can actually just kind of the whole thing with it. We'll go ahead and add ourselves a monopropellant tank as well. We'll make this, let's do about 0.5 meter, should be plenty. Let's stick that on the top, just like that. We're going to go ahead and color that, I don't know, we'll go with blue this time. We'll go ahead and grab this. Click on this real quickly. Going to go ahead and do some modifications here. We're going to set this to monopropellants. Boop, boop, boop. And we're good to go. Stick that back on the top. And now look at my beautiful gas mileage. It's absolutely positively devastated. In my opinion, this battery is actually pretty much the right size. But for whatever reason, this thing is tremendously, tremendously heavy. But again, we're going to need all that hydrazine to basically do most of the work here. So let's go ahead and grab our little nozzles here. This vessel is suffering from weight creep. Lots and lots and lots of weight creep here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'll grab my monopropellant. Go ahead and stick those on the side. You're going to need these for pretty much the entire flight here. Pop that around the outside. I'm going to go down below. Let's go ahead and get some more of these. And these are basically going to be for attitude control. Nice. Okay. So our lunar lander now is not looking so hot. It's at 2,300 meters a second, which isn't nearly enough in order to be able to safely land the thing and then get back up into space. So we've got a couple different things we can do here. The first thing we can do is we can swap the fuel inside of this thing out for something that's got a little bit more density. Let's experiment with that first. So again, just poking around my possibilities here, see what we can do as far as getting a little bit higher density. Okay, if I do liquid oxygen and hydrazine, that's going to murder my thrust to weight ratio, but I got 4194, which is a little bit better. Let's go poke around here. That's pretty good too. Aerosine, oh boy. Now that stuff's nasty. But again, that's 4,000 meters a second. Again, it's got a little more density here. Go poke around, see if there's anything that comes flying at them. 4194, naturally N2O and hydrazine. That's a weird combination, but I'm not complaining too much here. Oh, what do we have? NCO and aerosine again. That's actually pretty good. Let's see what else we can do to get us a little bit more. RFNA, oh boy, you want to talk about poisonous. RFNA is definitely going to take the rule as far as that goes. But that's also going to be 4159, but my thrust to weight ratio is starting to suffer a little bit there. All right, 4045, it's not bad either. UDMH, 4067. So one of the things I love about this program is they just have so much H2O2 and hydrazine. It's looking actually pretty good. You know, I think we're going to end up with the aerosine, to be honest. I'm just debating which version of the aerosine I really want. All right, Tonka 250. That's pretty good stuff, by the way. All right, zip through it real quick. Nitrous oxide, not recommended. That stuff doesn't quite work so well. So let's go ahead and get my aerosine here. This is what we're probably going to get stuck with today. So it's going to get me the perfect thrust to weight ratio, and it's going to get me about 4,000 meters a second, which is actually going to be quite a bit for us. And that should be enough for my little lunar lander. Fingers crossed. And if you look the other way, oh, look out the window. There's somebody walking their dog. Okay. So, oh, nope, the dog just went by again. Okay, good. Sweet. Okay, so that's going to be plenty for us to be able to safely down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on some landing struts. We'll go ahead and get 4 of those. We just want to make sure it's nice and safe. And there is our lunar lander. I know you're looking at it going, yeah, whatever you call it, Chief. You can call that a lunar lander all you want. It doesn't look like one. Fingers crossed that I'm not accidentally going to bop the engine when I land this thing, but I give this mission about a 50-50 shot of actually being able to get there safely. Okay, so now we need to get this stupid thing to the moon. So my initial feelings are going to be a 2-stage rocket for that purpose. So now that I've got this one kind of ready to go, and this is going to work fine for my purposes, I'm going to go ahead and get myself my next stage. So just thinking real quickly, we're probably going to steal like a Centaur upper stage kind of a model. We're probably going to need about 2,800 meters per second, I think is what it's going to work out to be as far as delta V goes. We could probably do that with hydrogen and oxygen. So let's go ahead and do that. So far we've used 1.25. We'll make this a 1.5 meter stage. Make it a little bit longer. I'm going to go ahead and throw the Interstage up on the roof. My thing for interstages, of course, is you always want to stripe them so that you know exactly whose interstage we're dealing with here. Of course, we had another interstage, and we forgot to stripe that one as well, so I'll stripe that. Looking pretty good. I'm going to slap this thing on the bottom like that. Ooh, that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and get myself an engine. And we're going to need probably a mage. All right, what do we got? So this new stage is 2,400 meters a second, which is actually not too far off from what I wanted. However, I did not want to use this particular propellant. I wanted to use something that's got a little bit better mileage here. So we're going to do a liquid oxygen, a liquid hydrogen. So what does that do? That knocks us down to 1,284 meters a second, which is not great, to be honest. Go ahead and again, this is going to be something we're going to be using in space. So I'm going to go ahead and optimize it for space fuel economy here. Now it looks pretty good. That's hurting my thrust a little bit, but I only need a power to weight ratio of 1 here, so I'm not too worried. And you can see that gets us about 14, but like I said, I needed about 28. So what I'm thinking for this stage is actually to go up to a new diameter. So we're going to go up to a 1.75 meter diameter here. Slap that back on the bottom. That gets me 1806. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere now. So I'm going to go ahead and strengthen this thing. We'll go up to a 10 meter stage real quick. Again, I'm just estimating, kind of going by the seat of my pants here, but this is what makes it fun. So that gets us to 253. That's still not enough. We'll go up to a 13 meter stage, or of course we can always go a little bit wider too if we needed to. Slap that one in the bottom. Okay, we're almost there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some carbon fiber here in order to get myself just a teeny bit more fuel. Again, those nice carbon nanotubes do a wonderful job of lightening up the structure without causing any structural integrity issues there. So that gets me about 2897, which is almost perfect. So this is going to what's that? Act basically as mass 4B. That's going to be my little lander. Now we have to get this whole stack into space somehow. Now, when it comes to getting stacks into space, I've got some fun ways to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself another fuel tank. Get myself another Interstage. Go ahead and slap that on the roof. This fuel tank, we're going to go with a 2 meter diameter this time. Again, you want it to get it progressively wider as you work your way down. Slap that thing on the bottom. And you can see the 2 meters is not much. But again, that'll be perfect for what we're trying to achieve here. Let me go ahead and set that to be striped like I always do so we know that that would be fun to play with. And this is going to be my gotta get us to space stage. Now, I am a massive fan of solid rockets, but the problem with solid rockets is you can't really steer them. So as a result, you're going to have to use something that you're going to have some gimbling capabilities with. Otherwise, we're going to tumble really, really bad. So I'm going to go stick an Apex engine at the bottom, and that's way too much. Speaking of which, I'd actually check the thrust-to-weight ratio on this. I knew it. So that thrust-to-weight ratio is actually too low for us, so we're going to have to increase the size of our engine a little bit to get that thrust-to-weight ratio at least up to 1. So unfortunately, it's going to make for a gigantic engine. So I'm going to go over to the Tinker panel. We're going to use shrink the part scale just a little bit to kind of knock it down. Again, this is just a very advanced engine. Boop. Okay, so now we got our big first stage on here. So we need about 4,500 meters per second on this particular stage. You can see we're a little low. I am going to opt for kerosene this time because it's just going to be a little bit easier. I personally think this engine's just a little too big for our purposes. So we're going to go ahead and tweak that just a little bit here. So I'm going to grab that, put that down. I'm going to shrink it. Of course, I'm going to drop it down so we're at 0 kilometers. Stick that thing back on there. 3260 is pretty good. I think it's time to go ahead and bring in some solid rockets as well. So our thrust-to-weight ratio is looking pretty darn high. I'm actually going to tweak this to get a little bit more fuel economy at low altitudes. All right, that's looking pretty good, actually. I like that. That's a 4.0. Oh my gosh, this thing's huge. Let me go ahead and reduce its scale a little bit to get us to about 1.5. And that's going to get us 3,400 meters a second. So we're going to have to get some extra juice in this thing in order to get us a little bit higher. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to grab myself some interstages. Go ahead and slap those on the side as well. We're going to make quite a few interstages here. And I'm going to go ahead and get myself some existing solid rockets to help us out here. I'm a fan of the Gem 60, if you ask me. There we go. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. Let's go ahead and radial that sucker around. Haha, look at that. That's excellent. Now that's what I call a rocket. Okay, now last steps here. Of course, we need to put some little fins on the bottom to kind of help us out, be a little bit more stable during our climb. So let's see here again. I'm fingers crossed that this is going to work. You never know. This thing might crash miserably, which is pretty typical for my kind of rockets the first time out anyway. Make that a little bit bigger. Again, you want to try to create as much drag as possible on the back of the rocket. If you don't do this, it will be unstable during its climb. As a matter of fact, I'm going to actually tweak. We're going to use some advanced aerodynamic techniques here to reduce the drag of the upper body here. Because if we don't, we're going to tumble the moment we start to rotate a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this component here. I'm going to reduce its drag just a tiny bit. We'll do about, let's say, 75. And let's knock this one down to 75.2, meaning all of our drag is going to be hanging out at the bottom. All right, let's grab that little fin I just created. We'll go ahead and make that 5x as well. And there is our moon launching landing rocket. I'll give it about a 50-50 shot of this actually being successful. Like, I'd be amazed if it did, but I wouldn't be offended if it didn't, kind of a thing. Okay, let's check our staging this time to make sure I didn't really goof this up, because man, have I made this mistake 100 times. So let's see, side interstages, that's accurate. Let's see, engines, we've got all our solids, but we don't have our apex for some reason. Put him right there, get rid of that. Okay, so these are all going to fire. We're going to interstage those. Then we're going to interstage this and fire up the mage engine at the same time. Okay, looks good to me. We're going to go up to this interstage, but we're also going to fire up that engine at the same time. Boop. We've got the landing legs, which is the interstage, which is going to get us down to the ground. Okay, let's see how we did. Boop. So let's see, our first stage here is 4,300 meters per second, which should get us pretty darn close into space here. Our second one, I want to make sure we're not actually firing the wrong one. Of course, if I change my altitude here, you can see that's where all the rest of my meters per second come out of. But we have to get into space first. So fingers crossed on this one. I'll notice that my total delta V is only 6,000, but now we're 13.1 kilometers a second. Oh boy, this is going to be, this is what I call an experience. All right, let's go load up my favorite little program for this. This one, by the way, you can find very easily if you poke around online a little bit. I am going to leave this step in here. I usually don't. Target altitude is going to be there. Go ahead and zero that out. 0.1. Let's see here. Wait no time. Wait no time. Beautiful. Okay. Are we going to get to the moon? I have no idea, but we're going to find out, aren't we? I'm going to reduce my volume just a teeny tiny bit. Let's go ahead and increase my thrust all the way to 100%. Go! That's way too much acceleration. Okay, so I think the engine I put on the bottom of this thing is a little bit too much engine, if you ask me. But again, we're going to see exactly how this goes. How do I turn my volume down? That is positively deafening. All right, that should be a little bit better for everybody. Hopefully you can hear me overall. That's a lot. Going up. So the way this is designed now is hopefully those will drop off accurately before we start raising our apogee. If we start raising our apogee before those have disconnected, we're going to have some really serious problems. Well, one thing I'm not thrilled with already is the fact that I'm watching myself waste monopropellant, and that's exactly what I was hoping wasn't going to happen, which means we're probably going to tumble now, but we'll see. We'll see. Nope, we're looking okay. We're looking okay. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Oh, we got a little bit of a roll going on there. All right. Ooh, that's a lot of roll. That's making me a little nervous. Can we get that roll arrested, please? Nice. All right, so we're going into a circularization mode automatically. I'm not thrilled with this so far. This is actually really, really scary because I have 2,100 meters a second of delta V left, and unfortunately my solids did not break off at the right time, which means my automatic program here might get me in a really, really nasty spot if I'm not careful. Okay, we're still gliding upwards here. Plenty of thrust. My apoapsis is actually coming down, so I'm actually going to take over manual control here. Try to round this out just a teeny tiny bit better. There we go. Okay, up comes the apoapsis. Bring the nose down a little bit. Again, we're circularizing at a low altitude here, which is actually very difficult to do usually. All right, picking up plenty of orbital speed here, though. This is kind of nice. All right, starting to raise the apoapsis again, which means we're starting to raise our periapsis as well. All right, I'm just going to cut that off. Set that to about 0. Okay. So what this program is waiting to do now is it's going to wait until we get up to altitude, and it's going to try to circularize me. I'm probably going to have to override the program here. All right, give ourselves enough delta V to kind of climb back up. And we want as little eccentricity as we cost. Oh, too much. One of the things that's always annoying about this. Okay, perfect. Fast forward, go. You can see all my solid rockets landing in the ocean. That's always fun. Prepare for burn. All right, if I've done my calculations decently correct, I should have look at that. 3% fuel left. Nice. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and fly to the moon. Boop. So we're going to go ahead and separate that stage from that stage. And now this is going to be our get us there stage. So this is our get to space stage. This is our get us to the moon stage. So unfortunately, my, I guess I want to call it... Oh, look at that. I remember. That was an earlier attempt. It didn't go so well. So my rocket science foo is fairly weak as far as this stuff goes, but we're going to do the best we can with what we have here. So that's going to be my target. I'm going to go ahead and select this as my ejection point, and I'm going to go ahead and give myself enough delta V to get over there. Hopefully I did my calculations accurately here. Otherwise, we're going to have a real fun time trying to line this up properly. I'm going to go, whoa, too much. I wish it was a little bit more stable, but it never works right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here. Zoom in on my little node here, and we're going to try to drag that so that we can line it up with what our target is. You can see it doing the math real quickly. One of the neat things is you get this little handle, which makes it a little bit simpler. All right. Okay. So we can see right there, that is my closest point of bumping into it. So my release is probably just a little, I want to lead it just a teeny. No, I don't want to use too much energy, though, because I probably need some to slow down once I get there. So I'm going to go ahead and tweak my approach here. All right. Click on it and start dragging it again. Can I get close? Yeah, if you do something like that. Oh, look at that. Right there. And now what you can do is you can go back to it. And you can actually reduce the amount of energy that you're putting into it until you get it where you want it to be. And so, see how I'm basically slamming into the planet right there? So what's going to happen is we're going to leave this influence. We're going to hit this point. We're going to be grabbed by the moon. And then what we're going to have to do when we get close is we're basically, when we do this little slingshot action, is we're going to have to reduce it and actually pop this thing down for our landing when we get a little closer. So I'm going to go ahead and authorize that burn. Boop. And off we go. So remember, this is our big injection stage here. We have a really, really highly fuel-efficient engine. This is a 452 kilonewtons, plenty of ISP to get us over there. Unfortunately, because of the fuels that we're using on this thing, it wasn't terribly dense, which gives us a very, very heavy fuel tank, which is definitely limiting our capability to get there in a hurry. All right, so let's go ahead and watch our burn start to take shape here. You can see our apoapsis is up, slowly growing. Again, there's a little slingshot action. Once we have a little bit more information, we can go ahead and do a correcting burn and go ahead and snap ourselves to the moon. Again, this is like my second time ever trying to get this thing on the moon. I have managed to get myself all the way out into the other part of the solar system, but that is an involved process to say the least. And they're actually doing an update pretty soon where they're going to be releasing basically new systems, or not new systems, but new moons and stuff to do in the Juno zone. All right, so this is my handy dandy burn here. Picking up quite a bit of orbital velocity, but look at how much fuel I have left. So my calculations are actually pretty darn good today. And that's, beautiful. So you can see my burn was decent, but unfortunately, as it stands at this exact moment, this burn has set me up to smack into the planet, which is not desirable usually. So what we can do here is we can try to fix a little bit with another burn to try to kind of get around that problem. But remember, this is our trajectory, not where we are. So if I grab right here, we can go ahead and plan our little maneuver to try to compensate for this unfortunate event. So if I speed up time, I smack into it more cleanly. If I go backwards with my delta V, you see how it creates that little kind of gentle arc to it. Whoop, too much. So, yeah, come a little bit more, come a little bit close. Whoop, too much. There we go. So then what we can do is we can order another burn right there, where we're basically going to slow down in order to orbit the planet itself. You can see, I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit. And this is taking a lot of energy to do this maneuver. And that's looking pretty good to me. The eccentricity is going to be pretty high still. Zoom in a little bit here. Again, we're working with an imaginary moon. Whoop, too much. And we need just a little bit more than that. Delightful. Sweet. Okay, so those are my two burns. I'm going to go ahead and click on my first burn. Fast forward time. Whee! Go ahead and execute my first burn. That did not take much correction. Let's go take a look at my second burn. So the way this usually works is you get a little bit closer to the planet, all of a sudden the thing glitches out on you. So there's my destination. Go ahead and speed up time a little bit here. I'm going to suddenly be grabbed by it. There it is. See how everything changed its position here? I'm going to go ahead and speed up time a little bit here. We're kind of drifting downwards. We're getting close. I think that burn's actually, I think I actually calculated that pretty well. That's like the first time I've ever done that like well. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. All right, we've reached the moon. Here comes this is going to be our circularization burn. We're basically going to sit here and suck all the energy out of the ship, trying to go ahead and line ourselves up so that we can go ahead and enter this particular orbit. Now, of course, those of you who know things like the Saturn V knows they did this a little differently. They actually had the lunar lander internally stored, and they'd pull it out along the flight here. But this works pretty well for me. Now, if I was a more clever person, I would design a little docking collar here so I could use this stage to actually return me back to the planet. I'm not going to do that, but that would have been the smart thing to do. There we are. 30 kilometers. Detach. Stand by for lunar lander mode. Now, if I was a little bit more clever, I'd run this thing into the ground, but unfortunately, I wasn't that clever this time. Let's go ahead and get this engine going a little bit. All right, here we go. Lunar lander mode on. Make sure we're burning pure retrograde here. Remember, we gave this thing plenty of fuel. Hopefully I did not run out of monoprop, which I only have about a half a tank left. Now, if I was a more smart person, I would have put all the monoprop in that stage so I didn't have to carry it down to the moon with me. But again, I'm not that clever. All right, we're just sort of bleeding off our last little bit of speed here. By the way, for those of you who are doing this as well, make sure you have your hands on the Z and the X key. You're going to need them a lot for this stage. Remember, we did not design this thing with a massive thrust to weight ratio. Even though it appears to, it's not nearly as strong as it looks. All right, continue doing our little burn here. Again, we're just trying to slow down. Fingers crossed that when we do get close to the ground, we're going to have the ability to actually see where we're going. I'm not convinced that we will, but you never know. All right, get your finger ready. Might want to switch to translate mode. You can actually hold down the W key and help burn with our monoprop there, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. All right, fingers on the Z key. I hope our landing spot's going to be safe. I have a feeling it's not, but it happens. All right. We're looking at 190, 180. Remember, our thrust to weight ratio is still 3-to-1 here, so we can actually basically use this thing like a helicopter if we had to. And we've just about sucked the last bit of energy out of this thing. We're interested in surface velocity more than we're interested in anything. We're basically going to zero out the surface velocity and fall like a rock. 45, 44, 3, 2, 1, engine off. And that's it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to face myself at 90 degrees here, and we're basically going to try to lunar land our way down on this thing. All right, fingers crossed, everybody. Fingers crossed. Let's speed up time a little bit. Of course, what happens when I speed up time, I end up dying horribly almost every single time. Let's go ahead and do a correction burn. And that crater's looking pretty good, but to be honest, I don't actually know what that crater has down there as far as safety concerns goes, so I don't want to get too close to it. Now, going back to something I was saying earlier, so we had a neat little exercise with this game called Lunar Lander for the TRS-80, and you used to have to enter exactly how long and how much thrust to use for each burn, and like the graphics were not exactly what I consider to be terribly good. But this process is, again, like I said, not terribly new. All right, we got 6,000 meters to go, about 84 meters a second. That's pretty good. Speed up time for a little moment. All right, 3,000 meters to go. Go ahead and burn that pretty long. Oh my. Here we go. Oh, I got such a bad feeling about this. You know, another YouTuber would probably save their game about this point, just in case, you know, something went wrong here. But I'd like to make things difficult for myself. I'm sorry. Go ahead and reduce my thrust a little bit here. Remember, we only need a thrust to weight ratio of 1. So I can actually reduce my thrust to basically, watch this. I can knock that down to about 1.25. So that's basically canceling out my last bit of acceleration here. Remember, 39 meters a second is still a lot. All right, let's go ahead and increase it just a little bit. I want to kind of bleed off the last bit of that. Oh my gosh, I don't know if this is going to work. All right, 10 meters a second is actually way too fast. We need to be coming in about 5 meters a second when we finally do touch the ground. Whoop, I don't need to adjust that right this second. Okay, let's go ahead and cancel out any of that kind of lateral movement here while I'm doing my last little bit of landing. That's looking pretty good right there. Perfect. Okay, we have no lateral velocity left. It's just a matter of putting this thing down on the ground. Oh boy. I know you've always like, well, this isn't that bad. It's stressing me out just a little bit here. All right, 5 meters per second is what we're going for, but it looks like we've gotten ourselves some drift. We want some drift in this direction, though. The problem is this thing isn't even, so if I go like this, I'm trying to cancel out that last bit of drift here. Okay, here we go. That does not look even. Oh my, that is not even at all. Okay, let's try scooting this way, I guess. No, I need a thrust to weight ratio of at least 1. No, I don't need that much. Oh boy. No, I don't need that much. Okay, let's get this way to try to find something a little bit soft to land on here. That's looking pretty good. Now, unfortunately, the way the controls are configured is they're not view dependent. So what will happen is, even though you've shifted your view a little bit here, it's not going to be quite as even as you think. Like if I go like that, it's not reversed to what that is. It's so difficult. Okay, let's go ahead and cancel the engine, and let's come in. Okay, no pressure, no pressure. Very expensive spacecraft, very expensive spacecraft. That sucked. Okay. Okay, that was garbage, but one thing I do want to shut off is these guys. We did it! Oh man, I can't believe that actually worked, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so the great news here is we did bring some astronauts with us, so we're going to go ahead and inject Terra here. Have fun, Terra. Watch your step. Whee! Ow! Ow! All right, we did it! All right, folks, hopefully you found that video kind of fun. I thought that was kind of enjoyable to try to land an astronaut on the moon here. I can see that my rocket is still kind of doing this little dancey thing around. Chances are it's probably going to flip itself over in like 2 minutes and explode. That's just kind of how these things usually end. But I am super excited that we managed to get all the way to the moon. We can start setting up our colony. And of course, look at this. That is such a dramatic little picture here. I'm actually going to move my guy over to the side. And we'll probably use that kind of as the ending picture. All right, folks, hopefully this has been kind of fun. I kind of enjoyed making this one. I still can't believe that worked the first try, but other than that, enjoy.